Right, so today we're talking about how to speak from your heart, and that way you can start speaking your truth in the world, which will lead to more connection, get out of all of that disconnect, get out of all of the confusion, because you'll be coming from a deeper place within you, and that way you can have freedom to connect at a deeper level with others and have way more meaningful relationships with others when you learn how to speak from the wisdom within your heart. And this is something that I've been doing for the last 20-25 years, is speaking from that deeper place within me. But more importantly, I've put this into a way that other people can do that. So, for example, in the Head to Heart program, this is the fourth technique that I teach people. So after the fourth week, people have that ability, they have that technique, they have that skill to be able to speak from their heart in the world, which is very different than speaking from your head in the world. It's what connects you to everyone. And that's why I'm excited to have you here today, because once you have this skill, then no matter where you are, no matter what's happening in your world, you'll be able to connect in a very deep way, very meaningful way, by being able to tune into what your truth is and then speak that in a powerful way to people. And that opens up more opportunities, gives you a freedom of expression, and you can just be yourself in the world. And unfortunately, I'd say 99% of the population have no idea what the heart actually is, let alone being able to speak from that place within. And that's sort of why I do what I do, like it opens up this connection rather than living a head-based life, which is full of all the stress, the worry, the anxiety. Instead, it opens up a heart-based life, which is full of the peace, and it's full of all of the love, and it's full of all of the joy that's within you. And when you learn this technique of how to speak from your heart, then you can allow all of that peace, you can allow all of that love, you can allow all of that joy to come out of you in a very straightforward way, so that you can connect at a deep level with people and have the freedom of expression that you're probably longing for. Because could you imagine a world where everyone was not just in their heart, but also expressing from their heart again? The whole world would be completely different if people made that shift from speaking a head-based life to speaking a heart-based life. There'd be a lot more connection, there'd be no more wars, there'd be no more disconnect. Instead, it'd be a world filled with peace, a world filled with love, joy, connection, and we'd be lifting each other up, lifting our fellow man up, so that they can be living their truth, be living their freedom, so that there'd be one whole world of connection. And that's why I do what I do. Instead of speaking from the heart, what is it that most people do? Well, the first thing that most people do is that if they have problems communicating about speaking their truth with other people, what they'll do is that they'll go out and do all of these communication courses. And for the most part, these communication courses don't work, or they don't work as well as you'd like them to. And for example, this was me probably 20-25 years ago, when I was going through a lot of social anxiety, so a lot of social phobia at the time. I thought, okay, if I can do all of these communication courses, then that'll make me whole and complete. So I remember going to one in Melbourne. It was called Gift of the Gab, where we learnt these techniques on how to speak to other people. And I started practicing these techniques with people, and sure, like I was a lot more, I suppose, social in the world. But when I was communicating with people, it was like this facade, like it wasn't really coming from a deeper place within me. Instead, it was just like surface level stuff. So asking people about the day, asking about the weather, can you expand on it? So all of these communication techniques, right, which were overlying all of this disconnect, because it was just another thought form, and it sent me actually more into my head. But instead, with the heart connection work, you don't have to learn any communication techniques. They're just going to block you from your truth. Instead, you come into a deeper place within you and just allow those words to come out. And that's what's worked for me. I don't have to try anymore. And it's also worked for hundreds of clients over the years that have come through this work. And it's something that you can learn too. Like, how do you tune in? How do you listen to the subtle voice within? How do you allow that voice to express itself in the world in a very meaningful and connective way? There's a specific way to do that. And that's what I teach people in the Head to Heart program. Now, the other thing that people do if they don't know how to speak their truth in the world is that they start avoiding situations. It's like, okay, well, that's an uncomfortable situation to go in. I can't communicate with people, so I'll start avoiding. That's where all of the isolation comes in. It's where all of the feelings of aloneness come in and feelings of disconnect, because your world gets smaller and smaller. For example, I was working with one lady from the US, and her big thing when she came into the Head to Heart program was around communication. She's like, I just have a problem with communication. She was feeling misunderstood a lot of the time. So we worked through like how to turn off all of the thoughts so that she wasn't getting all the anxiety, how to come into her heart so she could feel the peace and the love and the joy within, how to listen to the voice within her heart so that she could hear what was true, connected to the divine, so that all that wisdom came through. And then week 4 came, and it was about speaking from your heart. So we went through that technique on how to actually do that. And she shared this story. I'm like, okay, what's going on? She shared this story that she had bought something from the supermarket. I forget exactly what it was. It was some expensive thing. And she wanted to return it because it was the wrong thing. Right? And I'm like, well, just go return it. And she's like, but I can't. And I said, well, why not? And she said, well, the lady at the supermarket is very short. She gets very aggressive, angry, and she gets frustrated. And she puts that out onto her customers. And she'd done this a couple of times over the years, tried to get a return or a refund. But each time it ended up in a disaster. Yeah? So she's like, so I can't go and return it because this is what's going to happen, you know. And I said, well, have you tried talking to her, speaking to her from your heart? Right, that's what we're doing. And she's like, no. So she came into the technique. She practiced a couple of times on Skype with me. And then she's like, okay, I'm going to do this, right? And a week went past. And then a week later I said, so how'd it go? How'd it go with the supermarket? And the lady, and she said, wow, that was transformed. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? And she said, well, so I had the item. I went over there to the supermarket and went up to the return desk. She was speaking to a customer, yelling at a customer. And I was like, oh. And then she said, yeah, but I practiced the technique. I came in, had the item, it was free, the space to go and talk to her. I was in my heart and went up to her, and she turned around very rapidly, about to rip my head off. But I just stayed there, yeah. And I could see all of her tension just drop away, just melt away. I'm like, right, and then what happened? And she said something like, yeah, well, what can I help you with? Like that sort of tone. But she stayed there, and what happened is there was a connection, right? The lady could see that she wasn't trying to be aggressive back to her, but instead she just spoke from her truth, right? And the lady started connecting with her in a very good way. And she was like, wow, this is incredible. And so she asked from her heart, I'd like to return this item. And the lady, because it was in a heart resonance phase, she said, okay, not a problem. And normally she wouldn't get a refund, she'd just get a credit at the store. But my client asked for that refund from her heart, and the lady's like, not a problem, and then smiled at her. and that's the way it went, because my client had learned how to speak her truth, speak from her heart, not from her head. She said to me, yeah, if I had come from her head, I wouldn't have got the return, I definitely would have got a refund, I would have got a credit at the store. But a miracle happened because I started speaking from my heart in the world. And this happens over and over and over again. And it's when, like for me, for example, it's when all the synchronicities happen. Yeah, opportunities come my way because I'm coming from a deeper place within and not just a surface level. Yeah, and that's what you can learn too by learning how to speak from your heart in the world. Now, another very common thing that happens is that instead people don't speak their truth. What I mean by that, like there was a guy who came into the Head to Heart program, and he was in a long-term relationship, but they were living separately. He was living with his mum, and she was about to buy a house, right? And it came to that point, it was like a week before she moved in, and she asked my client, would you like to move in with me? So a big change in the relationship. Now, what was going on? There was something that they needed to talk about, which could have ended the relationship. Yeah, and my client had been avoiding this. Yeah, he's like, and he was all lost in his head. He wasn't sleeping well at night. He was like stressing about it, worrying about it. What am I going to say? How am I going to say it? You know, because it could have ended the relationship. But he came into week 4 about speaking from his heart space, and sat down with his partner and said, yeah, there's something I need to talk to you about. And she said, well, what is that? And he tuned in and he's like, well, I don't exactly know, but I really need to express a few things, yeah? And then he started expressing from his heart. And he'd been worried about this for like weeks, right? Having this conversation. But instead, he could trust in a place within him that would speak his truth, yeah? What happened at the end, it went for about half an hour, and there was a lot of tension there, but he just stayed in his heart and spoke from that place, right, using these techniques that I teach. And he said he can't really remember what happened or what he said, but he can remember at the end. They were hugging each other. She was crying, he was crying, and they were connected, yeah? And the thing that they had been going through had been resolved, right? And this is a direct result of him, like, not just being in his heart, but speaking from that place. It's a very connective place. And this happens time and time again. And this is a skill using a very simple technique that anyone on the planet can start having these connective relationships with other human beings. And that's why this works, because it's a long-term fix, because that place within you doesn't go anywhere. Yeah. So in order to speak from your heart, it's just a matter of getting out of your head, all right, stopping all the thoughts. There's a very easy way to stop all of your thoughts that I teach. Second thing is to come into your heart. And there's a very simple step-by-step way to do that, using another technique. Listen to the voice within your heart, and there's a very easy way to do that. And then this technique of speaking from the heart, and that's when all the connective relationships come. That's when all the meaningful relationships come. So if that's something that you'd like to do, then it's just a matter of reaching out. And the way to do that is to book what's called a head-to-heart session. So somewhere on this page, there's a form. Just pick a date and a time that works for you, and then there's a short application, right? Be detailed in that application if this is something that you want to do. If you've decided, yes, I'm ready, and yes, I'm committed to do this, and this is something that I want to do now, then fill out that application. Be detailed, right? The more information that you put in there, the more you're going to learn about yourself. And then on the next page, after you apply, there's a training video in there that goes through the 6 techniques that I teach in the Head to Heart program, right? To get out of your head, come into your heart, and then start living from that place so that you have the freedom just to be yourself. And then email your confirmation. And then after you do that, then we'll show up, we'll connect on the call. So make sure to show up to that call, show up in a powerful way so that you get the most out of it. And this is a powerful call. Right? This head-to-heart session is about you and your life, right? And it's designed for you to get a pathway, like steps, between 1 and 3 steps, on how to get out of your head, how to stop all those thoughts, how to come into your heart, how to feel all of the peace, love, and joy there, and how to start coming from your heart in the world. So what we're talking about here, like how to speak from your heart so that you have those connective, meaningful relationships so that the opportunities start coming back in and you start having that freedom in your life. And on that call, we'll come up with a simple step-by-step plan so that you can be living that way the majority of the time. And at the end of that call, then we'll both know whether it makes sense to continue working together or whether it doesn't make sense to continue working together. And if it's not, I'll let you know. But if it is, I'll let you know that too. Then we can explore ways to work together. But either way, this is a powerful call. Right, because at the end of the call, you'll be walking away with clarity on the steps that you need to take to get out of your head, stop all of those busy, worrying thoughts, come into your heart, like how to come into all of that peace, love, and joy within there, and then start living from your heart in the world so that you can have that freedom just to be yourself and have all of those opportunities come into your world that come from living a heart-based life. And that's the power of this call. It literally has the power to transform your experience of what it is to be alive. So make sure to pick a date and a time that works for you. Fill out the application. Watch the training video. It has a lot of case studies as well to give you a deeper idea from people who have come through the Head to Heart program of how that can impact in a positive way your life, and then show up powerfully for the call. And I look forward to speaking with you soon.